the longest, toughest postseason climb. And after all that, it's Ohio State together at the mountaintop.
There really wasn't a lot of people that saw this vision right here. This group of guys, this is very, very special.
When I came here, I talked about winning a national championship. I'm just so glad that God gave me a chance to be a Buckeye.
Will Howard upped his game last year on his way to a national championship. He led the FBS in total QBR and completion percentage while ranking second in yards per dropback. Significant improvement over his numbers when he was at Kansas State, where his QBR was 21 points lower and he averaged over 2 yards less per drop back. So good timing on that improvement, and we are delighted to be joined by national champion quarterback Will Howard. Will, want to talk a little bit about the upcoming NFL draft. You have said you believe you're the best quarterback in this draft. What is it that you think sets you apart?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, man, I think, if you don't have that belief in yourself, then what are you doing? So, I'm a confident guy. I feel like you have to have that intrinsic confidence in yourself. I believe that I have the arm strength. I believe I have the accuracy, all the physical traits. But I think really what sets me apart is my mind, my ability to deal with adversity. I've seen pretty much every situation that a college quarterback could see in my, 40 some odd starts. I've played a lot of football. I've seen a lot of stuff. Not a lot phases me. And I'm an elite processor. I feel like my ability to assess what the defense is doing and what we're doing, to combat that, I think that's what really sets me apart.
You and your team's run to the national championship, unprecedented because first year of this playoff format. So take us through what the last kind of 3 months have been like for you, starting with the playoff and going through your draft preparation so far.
Yeah, it's been all over the place, man. Going through that playoff, it was the longest season I've ever been a part of. I've never played a college season that's been that long. 16 games, kind of felt like an NFL season. And then straight into it. I mean, we got about a week to enjoy it and celebrate while being here in Columbus with the boys. But, then I went out to Southern California and started training for the draft and got ready for the combine and then got ready for pro day. And here we are, man. And I'm excited. I'm excited to figure out where I'm going to end up. My year at Ohio State was unbelievable. And, it was the best decision I ever made. But, I'm really excited for the next step and to see where I end up.
Our GM, Mike Tannenbaum, has a question for you. He joins the interview now. Mike?
Hey, Will, congratulations on a great ending to a good career. At this point, you've been poked, prodded, questioned. What part of the sort of pre-draft process has been a surprise to you?
I wouldn't really say there was really anything that surprised me necessarily, just because I was coached so well. My agency did a really good job of getting me ready for all the interview questions and everything that was going to be thrown at me, through this process. But really the thing that has surprised me the most was how many questions I've gotten about my teammates, man. Like, I knew I was going to get a ton of questions about them, but everyone seems to want to ask, man, if you could bring one Buckeye teammate with you, who would it be? And those, I swear, those are some of the hardest questions I have to ask, because if I could bring all of them, I would, man. And I loved my team that I was on, and having to pick one of the running backs or having to pick, one receiver or one defensive guy to bring with me is hard. But every team wants to know that. Every team wants to know who would you bring with you from that national championship team. If I could bring all of them, I would, man, because we had such an unbelievable team. But it's been a great process. I've enjoyed it.
So which one would it be?
We have to know now.
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot here. Everybody always starts out by saying you can't bring the freshman with you. So of the draft eligible guys, who would you bring? And it's a hard question. It really depends on the day for me. I could go with Jack Sawyer. I could go with Cody Simon. I could go with anybody on the defense. I could go with a Mecca or Trey or Q or Seth McLaughlin, any of those O linemen too. Like, man, I feel like the easy answer for me is a Mecca, just because, receiver quarterback connection. I mean, I'd love to bring him with me, or any of my O linemen. Those running backs too, I had a special relationship with. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's one guy I'd bring with me, just because there's too many good answers.
Important, especially in your team's case, to rule out the freshman, I think, in this particular case.
Yeah.
Is there an NFL quarterback that you look at and model your game after?
Growing up, I was always a Peyton Manning guy. That was, a big reason why I wore number 18. I feel like the way that he works, the way he processes the game is unlike, anybody else. Obviously, Tom Brady, some of those greats. But right now, I would say the guy I kind of look at, just based off of my size and frame, I guess, would be Josh Allen. I feel like that's an easy answer. I love what he's able to do, with the ball in his hands and extending plays, putting his body on the line for his team. Sometimes he, puts his body in harm's way, and maybe a little bit too much at times. But I respect that about him, and I want to kind of bring that to my game too.
Certainly not a bad guy to model yourself after. All right, the important
Absolutely.
stuff. We've heard you talk about your pregame playlist and the number of different genres of music you listen to. How do you decide on that, and do you have something special planned for draft night?
I don't really have anything planned for draft night. Probably just gonna have a little playlist going. I don't really know what my mom. I'll put her on the aux for that. But for me, going into games, I actually this year first, I never listened to like gospel music, but I listened to a little gospel music on the bus on the way to the game just to calm me down a little bit. And then once I got to the stadium, that's when I would start ripping a little rap music, get myself going a little bit, ready to rip some faces off,
Get yourself fired up at the right time. All right, man. Well, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining us here on NFL Live. Good luck to you in the draft and going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Take care.